Welcome back to another episode of Gaia Gossip, a production of her Many Voices Foundation. I am your host, Mary Jane Oatman. I'm joining you all from the ancestral homelands of the Nez Perce people, and I'm really excited to have a conversation with a storyteller and amazing plant community ambassador in her own right. So without further ado, we're going to get started, and I am super excited. I am rocking my gifted Northern Arapaho earrings from one of our fellow sisters, and super excited to have a Northern Arapaho community member come on and join us with Gaia Gossip to share more about the work that she's doing with Dawg Daze podcast, the work that she's done to launch the Indigenous Women's Cannabis Chamber of Commerce, and just really excited to learn more about Holly Butler. So without further ado, thank you so much, Holly, for joining us.
Hey there, Mary Jane. It's great to be here. Thank you for inviting me onto your show. This is amazing.
I'm super excited for this conversation as we lead into the Reservation Economic Summit, because Las Vegas was like our first meeting point. I think we've known of each other for a while in the digital sphere, because the Indigenous women plant touching world really is a community. And then as we had the opportunity to interface with the Cannabis Queens book by Melanie Wenzel and really see that the wide world of Indigenous cannabis is global, that we had the opportunity to have that first, meet and greet session. Such an honor. And that's when I learned so much more about you and the work that you were doing, and to just be in space, in community with you. And so I guess that's like where we're going to kick this off is like, what first called you to work with the plant and to be an advocate for the Indigenous communities? Because it's not always easy coming out of your own green closet.
This is true. And this is amazing that I get this opportunity to have a chat with you because, like you said, we met in Las Vegas during the MJ BizCon with Melanie Wenzel and her amazing book launch. And everybody's so busy. And so we never really had the chance to kind of sit down and chat. So this is an amazing opportunity. This is fantastic. So how I got into the Indigenous cannabis world is totally by chance. And also, I'm a disabled combat veteran. So, and I'm not into big pharma medicines, that sort of thing. No, thank you. And since I am Native American, I know there are ways to deal and ground myself with plant medicine. That's what we are all about. That's our culture. And my body and my mind and my soul was calling me in that direction. I came from a very strict background. So I've had little to no exposure to the plant itself. And then I joined the military, and I basically grew up in the military, went through 2 combat deployments, came back, was running around with PTSD. I didn't know it. It was, I was running around with undiagnosed PTSD for years until one of my battle buddies said, hey, you know what? You really need to go to the VA and talk to somebody about what's going on with you. And I'm a big strapping Arapaho woman warrior, and I'm there like, I really don't want to do this. I really don't want to go and sit down with a doctor and tell them everything that's going on in my head and my emotions and that sort of thing. But I did. I'm glad I did. So I have a fairly new to me diagnosis of PTSD. Got really interested in plant medicine, cannabis. I heard a lot of good things about it for the treatment of PTSD. Since I didn't know much about it and I'm not really exposed to the culture, I enrolled into the Master of Science in Cannabis Science and Therapeutics program with the University of Maryland School of Pharmacy. And I thought, if I'm going to go and I've always wanted to get my master's degree. I was kicking around, what do I want to do? Once you get your master's degree, you're kind of defined by that degree. And so I really wanted it to be something good. And so I saw the Master of Science in Medical Cannabis Science and Therapeutics at the University of Maryland School of Pharmacy, which is the School of Pharmacy there is historically, I think it's the fourth pharmaceutical college school of pharmacy in the United States. So I really wanted it to be good. I went there, got my Master of Science degree in the plant, in the medicine, in the policy. I just wanted to know all about it. And so that's what kind of brought me into this sphere of cannabis medicine. And I'm so happy. It's great. It's amazing.
Wow. So you shared like kind of the segue into one of the questions that I was, kind of thinking about, in that a lot of times there's like a moment or something that really shapes people's journey towards healing with the plant. And you mentioned a specific community that is really pivotal in the healthcare discussions in our tribal communities, and that is veterans access, especially with a majority of our tribal communities still being under the federal healthcare, Indian healthcare services. And then there's always that gap in access. And so I can see why, like, you found a very passionate pathway for a very specific group of our relatives. But even in the veteran population, has it been difficult to get people to discuss their cannabis? Why? Because of it still being federally illegal?
Oh, absolutely. I host a pro cannabis podcast because I am here in Wyoming and it's highly illegal.
Yeah.
They're so backwards in thinking out here. And you've talked to some of our Arapaho relatives out here too. So you've probably heard some of the stories of what's going on out here in Wyoming. Very backward. They don't want to hear or talk about even hemp out here since it's so highly illegal. I started a pro cannabis podcast. It's called Daze, and it was airing on Citizen Green TV. This year, I have launched, and I'm 100% independent. But there's a whole story behind that too. My experience with Citizen Green TV. But you can log on to Citizen Green TV and catch. You'll be up to date with the podcast, and it was very centric on veteran health and medical help with their different anxiety and then chronic pain as well. I've had some good shows about that. So if you want to check it out, and then I'm going to be on Facebook and that sort of thing with my Dog Days and going forward as an independent woman. Yay.
Yay, I love to hear that, because what it tells me is that there's been a lot of evolution and growth in your journey, and that the energy has only shifted. It didn't stop, it just
Oh, no.
shifted in its delivery, which might just be more access to our communities. Has there been any specific story or guest that has shifted your perspective or reaffirmed your resolve to do work for this plant?
Every time I do a podcast, everybody has such a phenomenal story. And that's what my show is all about. It's not about me and my opinion. I'm not Joe Rogan. Very similar to what you're doing with this platform is to give people a voice. And I just love working with the veterans. I love getting their stories, heartbreaking stories, but at the same time, it's stories of courage and resilience and overcoming. And it's just been a joy. And I had no idea that I was going to go into podcasting. I had no aspirations to be a podcast host, but I was flipping through a VA bulletin and I saw an advertisement for, hey, do you want to learn how to do podcasting as a therapy for PTSD? And I also wanted to get involved with activist work here on the Wind River Indian Reservation because there's a lot of crazy stuff going on here. I saw this advertisement in a VA bulletin. It's called Military Broadcast Radio. And I said, yeah, sure, I'll try it. Anything that doesn't have to do with big pharma drugs. So I called up, got in contact with Military Broadcast Radio folks. They said, yeah, sure, come on. And I think I contacted them on a Thursday and I went live Saturday. And it
Wow.
wasn't recorded, it was live. They do live shows over there. So it was, and being military, I mean, they were very comfortable with just kind of throwing me in the fire and seeing if I sink or swim or catch fire. I jumped in and I started swimming, and I became a pretty good swimmer with that.
Your story there, though, it just shared exactly why it is so important for the cannabis movement right now to continue to have platforms like Dog Days or like this Gaia Gossip. That was another reason, the why for Tribal Hemp and Cannabis Magazine. One, this is a really like critical time in history, and the work that we do is more thoughtful of 7 generations planning. And so I was able to learn language because 7 generations ago, somebody thought to document it now that there might be a time when it's in peril. And I think the work that you are doing is so critical for that, because 7 generations down the road, there's going to be young people that are on their journey of discovery of self, and they're going to be like, wow, they were talking about us then. So thank you for the work that you're doing in that, my sister, because I know that the stories that are being told now are shifting those perspectives for even other people who have limited knowledge or access to the education about the plant. And so how did you go from like the vision of Dog Days podcast to this next amazing adventure with the Indigenous Women's Cannabis Chamber of Commerce, which I am fangirling all over about, and all of the women that are involved, and the mission, the vision? Congratulations, first of all, but how that leap from the advocacy of the plant to potentially protecting Indigenous women's rights in the business aspect of this plant.
It came out of MJ BizCon. A lot came out of that. It came out of that event. Came back from MJ BizCon, and I had noticed that there was a Women's Cannabis Chamber of Commerce. And so I was there like, I'm going to check this place out. I'm going to check this organization out. And Addison reached out as well, and we started having a conversation, started, what do you do, Holly? How can we help you? That sort of thing. And so she got a bunch of us Indigenous women together. I think you were in that original meeting, I think.
Mhm.
And you actually witnessed the birth of all of this. But we were all just kind of in that Zoom room together, and I was there like, well, would you be interested in doing a chapter type of situation and having an Indigenous Women's Cannabis Chamber of Commerce, and then we can share our knowledge and our resources, because she's been doing this forever. I love Addison. Addison Morris is the founder of the Women's Cannabis Chamber of Commerce. I just think she's amazing. She wants to help. She's not a gatekeeper at all. How can I help you? And how can I push you out there? How can I make things help you along the way? And I just love that. I embraced it. And I said, yeah, I'm comfortable with moving forward with this type of agreement, arrangement, whatever you want to call it, kumbaya. I was totally down. So she was all on board, and she's been our biggest cheerleader ever since.
I love that. That was actually one of the questions, was just how can the broader cannabis industry show up in meaningful partnerships for our communities? And you just nailed it right on the head there. Stop gatekeeping, be more inclusive. And when those synergies happen, I think that there's a lot more of the Indigenous knowledge work that our communities do around the sustainability and the plant and the planet and the relationships involved there. How do you envision the Indigenous Women's Cannabis Chamber of Commerce taking those types of philosophies into action?
I can see it just blooming. That's why I named our network activation IndigiBloom. I get so excited whenever I go to our meetings and we have new members, and they're young. Oh, so happy to see involved, and they're just in love with the plant. They're in love with what they're doing, from cultivating it to selling it to dealing with in the dispensaries with their customers, their patients. I just love it. The future looks bright and amazing, and if I can help an Indigenous woman along her journey, that's just great to me. I'll be on cloud nine, and totally going into this. And a lot of the other women are going into this movement with the mindset of 7 generations. And this is going to be something lasting and sustainable, and something they can be proud of too. I'm a member of the Indigenous Women's Cannabis Chamber of Commerce, and we're going to be a sisterhood and a movement. And I'm just so excited. The momentum, it just took off, and I'm just amazed. It's fantastic.
I am amazed and baffled that I forgot my pin, and that's because it's on my jacket that I usually wear outwards everywhere. And I realized today would have been the perfect time to have my pin on with my fellow IWCCC sister, because that visibility, belonging, it is a tribal sisterhood, no doubt. But I also realized that there's probably a lot of Indigenous men backing this work and those efforts. And so I would be remiss to not give a shout out to Corey and the work that is being done by our partners to make sure that we have the tools, the mental and emotional support, the love, because this work is hard. It really is. The challenges that we face are usually because of what we're experiencing, tribal or indigenous communities as being an afterthought or even purposefully left out of these conversations. And so, what advice would you give to some of our indigenous leaders who want to be a part of this movement but don't really know where to start?
Oh, reach out to your organization as well, the ICIA. Absolutely. You guys, how long have you guys been around the ICIA?
Since the summer of 2022, that's when we officially launched the organization and kicked it off. And right off the bat, started planning for our big policy impact in Washington, D.C. with our first annual Washington, D.C. Policy Summit. And now we're on year 5, planning year 5.
That's fantastic. So you're first on my list, especially if they're a male, but we have supporters as well and we love them. We have sponsors and hopefully donors here in the future. We are officially launching here in March at Res 26. So our having a supportive community around us is just so important. We don't want to keep anybody out from being involved with our organization. We love you all.
Well, the storytelling part of the work that I think we do and what kind of bonded us together and what brought us together with the Cannabis Queens edition, it's been what allowed me to learn about what everybody else is doing out there in the wide world of cannabis. What do you think the next decade is looking like? And I kind of think you gave us a preview to that. I loved hearing your passion about the young people that are coming up into these roles to speak about the plant and the people and the planet over profits. What excites you about the next decade of the work that we do?
If I had a crystal ball in front of me, I would say I've been having this feeling for a while since interviewing people on my podcast and that sort of thing. And I'm coming from medical cannabis. So my vision for the future is I really think that our native nations need to start getting more involved with medical cannabis. And I love hemp. I love rec. Everything has its time and place. But I really think that in the future, in the next 10 years, we really need to start looking into and getting involved with the medical cannabis field, having medical cannabis grows, really upping the quality of it, not concentrating on necessarily the quantity, but the quality of it for our own people's health, and then also for our communities surrounding where we're growing our medical cannabis facilities. I see it all in my mind. I'm just kind of like describing what vision for the future Holly's vision for the future would be. But yeah, I think medical cannabis is going to be, or should be, hopefully in the next 10 years, really the gusto and the wind beneath everybody's wings.
I would concur. That is one of those areas where, as you know, even through the Indigenous Cannabis Industry Association network of talking with tribes about with the nuances of sovereignty of actually creating dual programs where they are expanding the hospitality tourism component with adult use access, but also the best way that we're going to attack the problems that we have in our communities in a proactive manner, I do also believe, is with redefining our own codes for medicine, even our own definition of what a drug is, and really expanding the universe of the healthcare for cannabis. And there are tribes that are doing this. I think that's what I also love about the work that we do with the preservation of story during this very historic time, is being able to take what could be case studies of best practice and putting them on a pedestal for other tribes to see, hear about, go visit, listen, learn, get your moccasins on the ground there. So, have there been any tours or facilities that you've been to that you want to give a special shout out to? Or are there any that you desire to go to in 2026 that we should road trip together on?
There's this fantastic brand and operation in Montana. It's called Sensi Care. And I would love to give a shout out to Sensi Care up there in Montana. It is kind of a drive, but it's worth it. And what they do is they grow their own medicine, their own cannabis, and they only have a certain amount of strains, but it's very controlled. They use live soil. It's just a beautiful operation, indoor, medical grade. Uh, you know exactly where your medicine is coming from, seed to sale. And I just love that vertical growing. You don't get that Colorado crumble because it's fresh and you know where it comes from.
Yes.
And it's just divine. And I really hope that's going to be the future. If there was a blueprint, if anybody came up to me and said, hey, what do you think we should be doing with our cannabis program? I would say go talk to the people at SensiCare because they're doing it right.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that. I'm just like right next door to Montana. I'm in this weird little bubble, and a lot of people are predicting states like Idaho to be, the last to legalize. But I think that's another commonality that we share, is just being in communities that still have a very conservative viewpoint. And how do we network our relatives, our kinship systems, and realize that we have a stronger base that are more in favor and pro cannabis, and how do we bridge that education to elected leaders who, for a variety of different reasons, continue to object to medical or recreational cannabis in our communities. It's all about growing relationships as well, even politically. And so I would really like to just learn a little bit more about why you maintain your perseverance in your own tribal community to do this when it is sometimes difficult to keep. You walk around like, I'm the cannabis lady, and everybody's like, that's the weed lady.
They do. They automatically think that I'm a pothead or anything. The truth of the matter is that since it is so illegal here, I just study about it and I do other plant medicines until it can be legalized here, which I am also the founder of our Wyoming Normal Foundation chapter here. And I try to put out on our website information about cannabis and trying to normalize it as a medicine. And I'm just over here beating my drum, singing my song, and I'm hoping other people show up. But you're absolutely right. I think that Creator sees us, sees strong women like you and I, and kind of taps them on the shoulder and says, okay, well, we need to start normalizing this, start beating your little drum. And hopefully people will join us in the movement because it is coming. Gotta stay vigilant with it.
Yes, well, vigilance, I know you have been, but you've arrived. I'm thinking like Reservation Economic Summit 2026, big launch of the Indigenous Women's Cannabis Chamber of Commerce. That's a pretty high profile forum to do your launch at. So can you just share with us what some of the kickoff events are going to be for this Res 2026 launch? And if you're not attending or did not have a chance to attend Res because you're probably viewing this after the fact, let this be the lesson that being in community is really important, even if that community is all convening in Las Vegas of all places.
And I just got back from the other MJ BizCon this year too. And I'm like, do I have to go to Las Vegas again? But it's great. I love Vegas. Bring me back as many times as you want to. But yeah, so our Indigenous Women's Cannabis Chamber of Commerce, we have a networking activation that is called IndigiBloom. And I just love that name because, blooming and growing and cultivating, I mean, that's all part of our culture. We're hoping to be able to integrate that into other Indigenous events along the way, too. We're eyeballing the 11th Native American Hemp and Cannabis Conference in Pechanga. It would be great if we could get an activation for IndigiBloom there. But we're going to start off at Res 2026. Our launch party is going to be Sunday night. And that is kind of like an icebreaker type of event right out the bat, right out the gate. We're just going to, take over. And we're going to have a good time of community and talking with other people, a launch mixer, icebreaker type deal Sunday night. And then we're going to have several yoga activations going on. We have a fantastic gal with Dope CFO Advisors, Christy Kem, and she has volunteered to do some fantastic yoga activations just to give yourself time during that conference to settle down and center yourself and ground yourself. I can't wait for that. I haven't been to a conference where I've had yoga activations mixed in. So I'm really looking forward to those. And then we're going to also have a fantastic last night smoke sesh, and you're going to host us with that. And I am so looking forward to it. By this time, it'll be already over and done with, but I can't wait, Mary Jane. Bring it.
I'm really excited about this as well. And I think about the journey of the very first time that I hosted a cannabis social mixer for Indian country. And it was in February of 2020, right before the world shut down with the COVID pandemic. But it was in Washington, D.C. for the launch of Tribal Hemp and Cannabis Magazine. And so that's what I'm also really excited about is coming full circle with my own storytelling journey to relaunch THC Magazine and have a special little feature in there of the Indigenous Women's Cannabis Chamber of Commerce. Very impactful work moving forward with the plant and the planet. Really excited to be a host of Gaia Gossip, of bringing more of the work that her Many Voices Foundation does to our communities near and far. I grew up having my own story with cannabis, and there was a large time in my younger childhood where I just hated it because I couldn't have a normal childhood. I couldn't have sleepovers. My friends couldn't come over because it seemed like my house just always smelled like pot, and it caused me to have this adversarial relationship with Mary Jane for a while. And then it grew and it evolved. And I think that is why the storytelling is so important, because a lot of our elders have had such negative experiences with the plant, and many of them have maybe not had their own personal relationship with it, but the plant took away their child and sent them to prison, or it caused their sibling not to be able to go to college because of the FAFSA box or something like that. What do you see are some of those other tools outside of the work and continuing to tell stories to shift the narrative? Because it's been a 100 plus year education campaign against the plant and all that she can do for Mother Earth and repair of ourselves and the planet. What do you think are some of those other tools that we can use to help overcome that negative stigma?
Normalization, has keep having conversations about her and all the good things that she can do. And I'm finding also that there's a movement out there, like currently, that is trying to quiet this movement. And Normal is feeling it. And I'm feeling it too, is that there's a lot of pushback. It felt like we were making steps forward, but here lately it's starting to feel, and I don't know if this is just because of the Trump administration or the Republicans in office or whatever, but it feels like there's a concerted effort to quiet the plant, and through different types of initiatives, legal initiatives, they're already trying to put things on the ballot where the people have spoken that they want it legalized, and there's already stuff on the ballot to walk that back. And we're seeing that a lot, but I see a concerted effort of trying to quiet the plant here late, and a lot of money being put towards that. Here in Wyoming, they have been kind of doing social media push on, just claims, non-scientific claims about the plant. And I, of course, invite them to the Wyoming Normal Foundation Facebook page, and because a lot of that can be dispelled with science. I'm kind of feeling a little bit of pushback and a lot of people trying to walk back the plant.
I would definitely agree. Here in Idaho, we have an initiative on the ballot, that is in a scary situation. It's one of those propositions that's got the funky language, if I vote yes, does it mean no? That type of very well crafted language to bamboozle the voters of Idaho. But House Joint Resolution 4 is an attempt by the Idaho legislature to permanently ban the Idaho citizens to be able to have a vote to legalize plant medicines in our state. And if successful, if people vote yes for HJR4, that means that only the legislature would have the power to legalize cannabis or any other plant medicines in the future. So they're definitely putting all politics into this initiative and taking all science out, because those types of initiatives, it does not matter what science says, what any kind of innovations or even the lies that have been told to us to date so far mean. It is just purely a political situation, which is really scary, because that's when I think it goes back to the work that we're doing to get the dirt on Mother Earth to do this work. Following the money is so important in what you had just spoken about, because that's where Indian country is at, with really finding where big pharma is backing, maybe potentially keeping tribes out of exploring cannabinoids as medicine, or the other backing of big alcohol in the areas or states where we've found extreme amounts of prohibition or defeated ballot initiatives for cannabis. So we really do got to follow the money, because the profit component, I think, of this goes back to our work as Indigenous communities in holding Mother Earth harmless from new emerging industries being built on the backs of our planet.
Yeah, that's some scary legislation.
So, people are using cannabis for many different things. We talked about the opportunity for the masses to be able to have access through recreational or adult use programs. We've seen a lot of our tribal communities really leaning into the medical cannabis programs. What is it looking like? I mean, at Northern Arapaho, I know that you mentioned it's still a lot of conservative approach, but is there any insight into being able to change medicinal codes for tribal citizens to be able to have access therapeutically under a medicinal code for the nation?
Yes, actually, we do. We have a tribal code, and it's only on the Northern Arapaho side. Here on the Wind River Indian Reservation, we have two tribes. We have the Eastern Shoshone and the Northern Arapaho. And we're on this reservation together, and we share a lot of joint programs. But however, this specific code is specific to the Northern Arapaho tribe. And we're allowed to have 6 plants and 3 ounces of whatever product on us. I have not seen this code in action, like the actual enforcement of it, because our Shoshone and Arapaho law and order code in tribal court, which is where you get drug into by the BIA cops, is not it does not reflect the code. So I have not seen it tested. I've seen it in writing. I know it exists. I know the Northern Arapaho people have voted on it, but I would not advertise if I were to. I would love to grow my own medicine. I'm not, for the record. But I would love to be able to grow my own medicine, but I just don't know the enforcement of it. I know what the repercussions and the punishment of it could be through the law and order code, the Shoshone and Arapaho law and order code, but I just not have not seen it tested yet.
Well, you had shared with our listeners earlier, very vulnerably, about your early access to cannabis being for PTSD. There are certainly a lot of different medical conditions and ailments that different tribal communities are revising their medicinal codes to actually have qualifying medical conditions. Have you, in your world that you're doing with Dog Days podcast, been able to hear about any different case studies or best practices that are happening in Indigenous communities to widen that access, even if it's grower co-op for medicinal access?
Oh, you are saying magic words. I love that, the co-op thing, because not everybody can take the time and the energy into growing their own medicine. I would love to see a co-op here where our elders can go, and as we're growing their medicine, they can come and visit it, because I'm sure it has to be tagged with their name and number and social security number or what, however. It would be highly controlled, I'm sure, like with everything else. But I would love to have a co-op where people can come and look at their plants and help water it or feed it or talk to it, because it's a living little being, creature, medicine, a little spirit. So, I mean, come and talk to your plants. Wouldn't that be amazing? As far as talking to the Indigenous community on Dog Days, it's not native specific Dog Days, it's more veteran specific. And now that I'm an independent operator, it even opens up more doors for me. So I can't wait for the different conversations that we're going to have going forward.
Well, I would imagine that you feel this like really urgent need to preserve stories, as do we and our teams here at Gaia Gossip. And we thank you for taking the time out of your very busy schedule and planning to sit down and have a conversation with us. If there was just one other thing that you could share with our listeners, specifically around advice or Indigenous women wisdom on self care, how you, outside of cannabis, have found ways to cope with your PTSD, whether that be in other veterans, circles of influence, or what types of other communities, and especially if there are any types of communities that our listeners can, maybe go into a little bit more and find their own community there as well.
Oh, fantastic question. In addition to my relationship with the plant, and of course, diet, exercise, but in addition to all of the cultural plug in for me has been a women's sweat. And it's done through the Healing Center here on the reservation. The Healing Sweat, we go in there and it's more of a talking circle, but it also, I feel so much lighter after I'm in there, and the rocks are burning and hissing, and we got a little drum going and that sort of thing, and singing our songs. There's a real feeling of connection and togetherness, and that it's really hard for me to explain. But after the sweat is over, I feel 100 times better.
Yes, thank you so much for sharing that story. I love all my Indigenous sisters that are doing this work, but specifically that, again, that other connection there of the earthwork and the why. You just hit it on the head there. A lot of people are so afraid of this plant, and she really does have such a divine feminine power and energy that is transformed in different ways, especially when set to fire. the way that that energy transforms. And you just said that about the sweat lodge, and it made me think of that bond that we have as sisters because of coming from lodge families and families that still carry a high value of the sweat lodge itself, is that most people just see stones and rocks and they don't think of them as anything but the power of the fire behind those rocks and what they do for us in that lodge. Is I walk out like on air feeling so light, just and then so tired, ready to rest and recover. Thank you for sharing that. I think that there's a lot of our Indigenous communities that are still on a search for identity and healing, and going back to the ancestral roots is really important. It's not necessarily outward, it's not in a bottle where you take 3 a day. It is here on our landscape. Thank you.
Yes, it's been a pleasure.
Well, it has been my honor and privilege to share the work and story of Holly Butler, the co-founder of the Indigenous Women's Cannabis Chamber of Commerce, as well as the host and creator of Dawg Daze podcast and Anubis Communications. I am so privileged to share this story specifically because Holly is blazing trails and she's doing amazing things. And Holly, if you can let everybody know where we can find you on social media, on the web, in the listener universe of the streaming and downloading and podcasting.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I'm all over LinkedIn. That's probably the best way to get a hold of me. So it's Holly Butler, and I'm on LinkedIn, and then also Dawg Daze is on LinkedIn. Thank you so much for the opportunity. And then, of course, the Indigenous Women's Cannabis Chamber of Commerce. Our website is www.iwccc.org.
Thank you again, Holly. It has been an extreme blessing to have you, and just look forward to all of the great things that you do moving forward for the community.
Thank you.
And so all of her Many Voices Foundation and Gaia Gossip listeners, check out the Indigenous Women's Cannabis Chamber of Commerce and join us next month for another exciting edition of Gaia Gossip.
Thank you again for joining us at Her Many Voices Gaia Gossip. Remember, whatever you do for another, you do for yourself. For more information, head over to hermanyvoices.org to learn more about other programs and get involved. From all of us at Gaia Gossip and Her Many Voices Foundation, thank you, and until next time.